Hey dudes, today I want to talk about the Waves WLM Plus meter. This is a great meter for measuring your overall loudness in LUFS, checking your dynamic range, and it even has a true peak limiter. So let's jump right into it and check out some of the features. All right, let's take a quick tour. So the short-term window is just measuring temporary loudness. It's not memorizing anything, whereas the long term is trying to find the average of all of the short terms. And this will be basically how you find your overall loudness in LUFS. So a very important window. Your range is also very important because it'll tell you the distance between your lowest or quietest moment and your loudest or highest moment. The reset button is handy, so you can reset this meter anytime and start over. The true peak limiter is awesome. You can turn it on by turning this to this pretty orange color. And you could go to the true peak max here of -2 is what it's set to, which is a common true peak max at the time of this recording. It just means nothing will exceed -2 on a digital meter. So it helps to stop any distortion or anything like that. This gain slider is awesome because you could be a little bit quiet or a little bit loud on your mix, but you like the ratio of everything. So this is just anything passing through this meter. You can just increase or decrease the amount of gain that you want as the sound passes through. And then you can hit that exact number that you want to hit on your target, which is right here. So right now it's set to -24, but you can change this target to whatever your target is for your project. All right, cool. That's a nice tour. Let's listen to some examples. Here is a recording of me talking evenly. There are no real spikes. It's a pretty good example of dialogue speaking at -24 LUFS. Great, so you'll see that the short term is going to kind of go away in a minute. It's grayed out, and then it turns into no anchor, which is what we were talking about earlier, is that it's temporarily measuring what is going through the meter, and when nothing is going through the meter, it's not measuring anything. The long term is telling me that I hit exactly -24 LUFS. Yay! And my range is telling me that this is very tight. So 3 is like almost as tight as you can get. There is hardly any ups and downs. It is very, very even. So there you go. That's how you can measure a very clean, easygoing example of -24 that's very even in terms of dynamic range. One little thing I will say is that sometimes the meter gets stuck. So usually what I do if I'm hitting reset and nothing is happening is just quickly play something. Here is a recording and then quickly hit reset. And if you're having trouble with reset, you just kind of have to push something through it again real quick and then hit reset. Knock it back to this -80 and you're good to go. Sometimes you get really quiet recordings, and it's important to understand that sometimes someone could be talking like this. And then sometimes they can just be talking in their regular voice. So our long term is like -21. That's not too far off from -24 if that's what we were trying to hit. But the range is 26. That is gigantic. So our first one was 3, hardly any range at all. This is really, really big in terms of dialogue. So you might have found it hard to hear when I was whispering and then found it a little bit loud when I started talking in a more regular voice. So the way that I would interpret this data is that I need to even this out more. So I would try to increase the volume, maybe by volume automation, of this first half, and then decrease the volume of the second half in order to get the range a little bit tighter. If you wanted your dialogue to be more even, then use the meter to read this data and even things out a bit. Here is a recording of me speaking a little bit on the quiet side, but I'm more or less even when I'm speaking. All right, cool. So our range is back to being pretty tight again. 2 is even tighter than 3. Cool. But this is -30 this time, so we're maybe a little bit low, I will often give a recommendation to have your dialogue between -24 and -30, especially if your overall program is aiming to be -24. That gives you a little bit of range in your dialogue and allows for other things like music and effects to be louder, and that your overall average will get closer to 24. So I could leave this. It's right on the edge, but because I want to show you everything about this meter that I think is fun and cool, I'm just going to quickly show you that you can either double click in here and type some math, like I want this to increase by 3. So this will get closer to 27, and I can reset my meter. Here, and we can play this again and see if this will increase everything by 3. Here is a recording of me speaking a little bit on the quiet side, but I'm more or less even when I'm speaking. Success! So hopefully you can tell this is one of my favorite plugins ever. It is so important for me to measure the overall LUFS of my mix, how loud my dialogue is, check in on that dynamic range, make sure it didn't get too big. If it is, that's cool. Then I know what to do. I can make my mix more even, make it more enjoyable for the listener, and the whole while, the True Peak Limiter is having my back and making sure that I never distort. So I don't know how I would mix without this plugin, and just to let you guys know, normally where I keep this is towards the end of my session, maybe right before it hits the speakers, but feel free to put it on all of your stems if you want to, or in various different places. But at the very least, if you have a meter track before your speaker track, you can also use that gain slider to get everything into the exact right zone that you need to and achieve the exact LUFS that the spec sheet is asking you for. So I hope you love this plugin like I love it. I hope you get to use it on all your projects. Until next time, later dudes.